There's a new day dawning, the time is at hand, where the glory of the Lord will be revealed to every man. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in. Open the door, open the door, open the door, and let the King of Glory in.
All right, let the King of Glory in. Open up the door. Starts right now. So fling wide, you heavenly gates. Prepare the way of the risen Lord. The Apostle John was on the island of Patmos. He was in prison for the testimony of Jesus Christ. And he heard a sound behind him. And he said, behold, I looked. There was a door standing open in heaven. And I heard a voice which was like a trumpet speaking with me, saying, come up here, and I will show you the things which must take place. That's what we need, my friends. We need a heavenly perspective of the things that are going on in the world around us, the things that the Word of God foretold would come to pass, those things which must take place, those things which are taking place even now. That is what this broadcast is all about, discussing the issues of the day, discerning the times in which we live from a biblical perspective and world view. Good day, everybody. Andy White here. It's good to be back in the captain's chair. And what you are about to hear is the fusion of heart, mind, and soul. I want to welcome everybody from all across the fruited plain and all around the spherical globe. Thanks for tuning in to a brand new edition, and this week's edition of Open Up the Doors. Do me a favor, I am streaming live over on my Facebook page. Please go on over there and join in the conversation. Let me know where you're watching from. Let me know where you're listening from. Do a meet and greet over there. For those of you on Facebook, if you could share it around your stream, share it around social media, share this URL over on Truth Platform or whatever platform you may be on, and invite people to the gathering, to the fellowship, to the fun and frivolity here on Open Up the Doors. We are streaming live. If you're outside of the Faith FM broadcast area, you can download the free Faith FM app. Just go over to your respective app store, Google Play or Apple App Store, and look up Faith FM in Sag Harbor, and you'll find us. Great way to listen to Christian programming, 24/7 here from the east end of Long Island. I'm cracking myself up. It's like I got to get back into the groove here. I'm away 1 week. Actually, I'm away 2 weeks because I missed last week because of my heart procedure that I had. But I'll share a little bit of that maybe later if I get to it. There's so much important stuff going on, and I am kind of on information overload today, and just want to order my thoughts right. But we will be going to the phones later in the second hour of the broadcast. If you want to jot down the phone number right now and be the first kid on the block, get first in line, 631-725-2069, 631-725-2069. If you'd like to be part of the broadcast later, besides just listening, and I'm glad you're listening, but I would love to hear from you as well, so give us a call. But as I said a moment ago, we've got a lot to get into and talk about today, so let me get to it. And as you've been noticing, there's a lot of financial crises going on right now, something we've been kind of anticipating and watching and looking for really for a long time now. But I want to backtrack a little bit. I want to begin by giving you a little bit of a recap, a little bit of a reminder of what we've been watching for over at least the last year and a half regarding the economy, and where and how we got to where we are and where we're going. But just to backtrack a little bit, so many different economic prognosticators, those who like to predict the weather, and those who like to predict the stock market, which I've given up predicting the stock market because it doesn't make any sense. The weather makes more sense than the stock market. But last August, one of these financial gurus, a guy named Egon von Grziers, I guess that's a good way of pronouncing his name. This guy is a Swiss banker, Egon von Grziers. Anyway, he's a former Swiss banker and financial expert. He stores gold for clients in the biggest private gold vault in the world, buried somewhere in the Swiss Alps. Anyway, this guy last year, in fact, it was back in August, quote, said this: massive money printing and huge amounts of unpayable debt will lead to a monster financial meltdown soon. Love this terminology, a monster financial meltdown. And then earlier this year, really late in the winter time, other financial prognosticators were forecasting that the mother of all economic crises looms, and there will be little that anybody can do about it. This was by some economist named Nouriel Roubini. He was warning about this impending crisis back in really December. In fact, December 2nd article, this past December, 3 months ago. Nouriel Roubini wrote, quote, the world economy is now moving forward at an unprecedented confluence. It's almost like the kind of unprecedented confluence. It's kind of like the kind of prophetic language that we who study and look at the eschatological game plan in the end times, we use this terminology: unprecedented confluence, the unprecedented tribulation that's coming, all these unprecedented convergences of the end time signs. But this guy's an economist. He's not talking from a biblical perspective, but I find it intriguing that he uses this type of language. The world economy is now moving toward an unprecedented confluence of financial debt and economic crises, Nouriel Roubini warned back in December. And it seems to me, folks, and I can go on and on just talking about what they were all predicting was coming, but it seems to me that this unprecedented confluence, it seems it may be upon us, or the very first labor pains, if you will, of an Econopocalypse that I've been talking about for quite a while. I mean, you look at this terminology that they're using: a monster financial meltdown, the mother of all economic crises, an unprecedented confluence. Oh yeah, this stuff, and this is just a few. I mean, like I said, I could quote dozens and dozens. So it raises the question in me, and it's something I've been sitting on for a while, really: is the Econopocalypse upon us? As far as I know, I've made that term up, the Econopocalypse. But that's what they're talking like. That's how they're beating this drum, this fear mongering, if you will. And it's not just fear mongering; it's a reality. If this economy goes down as far as everyone's predicting, all the quote unquote economic experts are predicting, and you can take that with a grain of salt. But it would be like an Econopocalypse. And, is it upon us? Well, it seems like it might be getting pretty close. The banking system may be imploding. The markets seem to be crashing. I looked right before I came on today. They were only down about 200 when I came on. I don't know where they are right now, but they've been tanking since these bank closures, which I'll get into in a moment. But don't worry, boys and girls, don't worry, because all of the liberal pundits and this administration is telling us that our economy is just in great shape. And that, don't believe your lying eyes, and this is just a blip on the radar. And don't worry, boys and girls, because the American taxpayer, that would be you and I, we're going to be tapped into picking up the tab for all the deliberately bankrupt policies. Let me emphasize that. Deliberately bankrupt policies, pun intended, that the Fed has implemented that have never worked. We're going to be picking up the tabs in these mega bailouts that they're now proposing. But that's the least of it, my friends. Yeah, it's bad enough, but that's the least of it. I mean, quite honestly, deliberately bankrupt policies. The Fed should be audited and investigated. I mean, there's been some folks that have been saying that for decades. Ron Paul, 20 years ago, was calling for an investigation of the Fed. Rand Paul's been calling for an investigation of the Fed, and I believe Ted Cruz and others. But it never happens. You know, I mean, I think they sincerely want it to happen, but you never get the support to investigating the Fed because, man, you open up that can of worms, and everybody knows the proverbial poop will hit the fan. But I'm digressing because that's not really what I want to talk about. But everything that we're seeing happening right now really is directly tied to the, again, deliberately bankrupt policies of the Fed. Folks, our government, and it's kind of weird. The whole idea of the Fed's kind of weird. The Fed is a private company, but it sets government policy, and the U.S. Treasury and all the administrations look to the Fed. So in a lot of real ways, the relationship between the Fed being a private banking institution, technically, and the government is really the epitome and the poster child for what corporatism and fascism look like. I mean, if you ever wanted to set up a fascist economic system, this is what you would do. You'd have this private bank and the government working hand in glove together. And that's exactly what we have here. It's exactly what we have. Again, I'm digressing, but I want you to get the background because our government has created this problem in a myriad of ways, but lately, in a major league fashion, with the Fed having, for the last several years, since COVID really, having a 0% interest rates for multiple years, along with them printing up so much fiat money. Remember, they were calling it quantitative easing 2 and 3 years ago? That nice fancy term, we have policies of quantitative easing. That was a euphemism for printing up trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars, which they repeatedly have done. And it's, folks, every economist worth their salt, worth their calling, saw this disaster coming because of these policies. And I just quoted just a few of them at the top of the broadcast. And trust me, it's only just beginning. This has only just begun. This isn't going to be a 2 or 3 day event, although the media would like to make it a 2 or 3 day event because we all suffer from, news ADD. And as soon as the next crisis comes up or something else happens, they've got us chasing our tails with all of these different crises, the polycrises that they've been calling them. But this is going to be a real one. This, I believe, is going to trigger a lot of things that we've been looking at, prophetically speaking. But the bottom line is this: every economist worth their salt, they've been warning us. Because when the Federal Reserve creates money out of thin air, it creates inflation. And that inflation, along with the rise in interest rates, ultimately eats up all the bank's liquidity assets, which is exactly what we've seen happening this past 2 weeks with the Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank here in New York, and another smaller bank that didn't get much play, but actually was the first one to go. I believe the name of that bank was Silvergate. And there's something that's connected in all those banks, by the way, which I'll touch on later. But anyway, the Fed policies are what have created this banking crisis, if you want to use that terminology, which is the terminology they are using. All that printed money drove up inflation. And then the Fed, which had this 0% interest rate, because they flooded the globe, flooded the money market with all this money, they overheated the economy. So now they reverse course, and in the last year and a half, as you know, they've been raising interest rates in order to cool down the overheated economy that they created in the first place. And thus now we're seeing, folks, the chickens are coming home to roost. And you talk to people who really know about the economy, you talk to people who really understand economics, and they will tell you that these policies are so stupid, they're so stupid, that you can really only conclude it's all being done on purpose to bring about their ultimate goal, which ultimately is more government control of our assets by pushing through a CBDC, a central bank digital currency. But I'll get to that a little bit later. But more to the immediate crisis. It's created. It's understood. Even U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen pointed to the rising interest rates, which have been increased by the Fed to combat inflation, which is what I just said. But she said, to whatever degree you want to give her any credence, she said that those interest rates, and she's right on this point, is the core problem for Silicon Valley Bank. But if it's the core problem for Silicon Valley Bank, it's the core problem for Signature Bank, for Silvergate Bank, and for all other banks down the food chain, so to speak, at one point or another. But again, folks, you listen to the president going on TV saying you don't have to worry about the banking system, it's sound. Don't worry about the economy. See, all the political elites' personal bank accounts, they're all doing great. That's all that matters to the social engineers. That's what this is about. This is all about social engineering. Because again, these are things we've talked about on this broadcast for years now. These things have been planned for decades. It's been a little bit here, a little bit there through incrementalism, but utilizing the Cloward-Piven strategy of overwhelming the system that I've talked about many times. The Cloward-Piven strategy of overwhelming the system from every direction so that it purposefully crashes so that they can bring about their statist, socialist government. And don't think for a moment, anybody out there in Radio Land, that this is just some right-wing nut conspiracy theory, because this administration, with their so-called rescue plan now this past week, is just about on the verge of nationalizing our banking system. Point at hand. In response to the major incompetence and egregious failures of Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank. Now, one thing I want to say on this note is that even though the Fed has been having these egregiously terrible economic policies, when you look at the boards of these banks, well, they were incompetent to begin with. So they just fell into the trap. They just completely fell into the trap. And that we can go down a whole bunny trail with that. But in response to these banks' incompetence and failures in and of themselves, their managerial failures, last Sunday the Federal Reserve announced a rescue plan that is potentially radically going to change banking in America forever if it goes through. They said that all deposits at Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank will be, quote-unquote, fully guaranteed and will be available Monday. That was this past Monday. In other words, the government is going to bail out billionaires. Let that sink in, because this is true. You know, the same people that are always saying, soak the rich, soak the rich, soak the rich, tax the rich, tax the rich. Well, now they're going to actually bail out billionaires. Because, you see, with these particular banks, especially Silicon Valley Bank, 85% of the depositors were well over the 250,000 FDIC limit. You know, when you go to the bank, folks, you see that little sign on the window that your deposits are guaranteed and insured up to 250,000. You know, like little fish like me and probably most of you out there, you know, most of us don't have $250,000 in the bank. I certainly don't. So I'm not going to go running out to the bank because I'm afraid the bank's going to crash, because technically speaking, at least on paper, my money's protected. Your money's protected. Once it's over $250,000, you lose it. That's always been the name of the game. Over $250,000, you lose it. That's why rich people who know how to manage their money, and if they're rich, they usually do, have their assets, their money, in many different banks, so they can cover them. Their losses should a bank go down. But now the government is saying, no, we're going to cover everything. So you're literally having, now again, I'm going to say this because this blew my mind when I first heard this. 85% of the depositors in Silicon Valley Bank, 85% of them were billionaires. And the government just told them, oh, well, don't worry about it. We're going to cover your losses. So where are they going to get that money from? Want to take a guess where they're going to get that money from? We'll get to that in a moment. But I'm sure you already know where they're going to get that money from. But this proposed rescue plan that was announced last Sunday night, and it did bring a little bit of a short-lived modicum of relief to the markets on Monday and Tuesday. It did stop the bleeding a little bit because, they just said, we're going to cover everybody. So everyone sighs, breathes a sigh of release. But it's probably unconstitutional. Just like Joe Biden's student loan forgiveness plan is unconstitutional. So this so-called rescue plan that everyone's banking on, pun intended, may never get off the ground anyway. As former Assistant Treasury Secretary Monica Crowley noted, quote from Monica the other night, if you want to change the law and go above $250,000 as a guarantee, well, then you have to go to Congress and change the law. So then, the key element of the White House plan may be dead on arrival from a legal standpoint. Nevertheless, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has insisted that depositors will obtain access to the funds. Never mind the FDIC only guarantees deposits up to $250,000. Now, this means that the agency should not be able to remunerate these accounts with more money in them. And furthermore, and this is the part that Monica was getting at, that $250,000 cap is a figure set by Congress. So Janet Yellen really lacks any legal authority to make such a promise of a guarantee to anything above $250,000. That's the first problem in this so-called rescue plan. The second problem to the hurdle is, of course, money. The FDIC itself indicated in its last quarterly report that it held $128 billion in its reserves. However, Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank, with their collapse, have $264 billion in combined deposits that need to be covered, or they're promising to be covered. They actually don't need to be covered, but now the government's saying they're going to cover it. Okay, well, they're going to cover $264 billion in combined deposits, but they only have $128 billion to do it with. Guess what, folks? They're either going to have to print more money, which is like the core of the problem to begin with, or they're going to tax you and me. Oh, but President Biden said, no, we're not going to tax. We're not going to raise taxes. This bailout will not be tax funded. The banks will have to pay fees. These people keep using the same bogus lines of stupidity over and over and over again. When do these people ever going to figure out, and they probably do really know this, but they just lie through their teeth anyway, that when you raise taxes on corporations, when you raise fees on banks, they don't pay those corporate taxes. They don't pay those fees. They pass it on to the consumer. Yes, that would be you and me. So our bank fees, remember those free checking accounts you used to get? Forget it. You're going to be paying for those checking accounts. Remember those free savings account you used to get? If you kept $1,000 or $1,500 in your checking account, you got a free savings account. Yeah, kiss those days goodbye. Because all these bank fees that this quote unquote rescue plan is going to put in effect, it won't hurt you. We'll just charge the banks, and then again they'll just turn around and charge you. I don't get what's so hard about figuring that out from these people, but that's where we are currently. It's really, in a lot of ways, a dog chasing its own tail. For Joe Biden to say that the money will come from fees that banks pay into the deposit insurance, it's utterly ridiculous. It's fictitious. It's deceptive at best. But here's where I want to get with all of this, and where I'm going to go in the second block when I come back. Whether you want to call it a cloud pivot strategy, or whether you want to call it the Great Reset, or whether you want to call it never let a good crisis go to waste, it all fundamentally flows out of the same philosophical fountainhead of a Hegelian dialectic: the thesis, the antithesis, the synthesis strategy, to bring about a massive shift in the order of things. This is what this is all about. This really is the continuation of the fundamental transformation of America that was begun in the Obama-Biden administration and is now being furthered in the Biden administration. But I'll explain more of that when I return. Time to come up for some air. Take a little bit of a Selah break. Don't go anywhere, anyone. I'll be right back. Let it be on earth, oh God. Here's Kent Henry. Let it be on earth, your kingdom come. Oh God. Stick around, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let your kingdom come. Let your kingdom come. Your kingdom come. A little blurb there from Kent Henry. It's our prayer as a body of Christ, as believers. We're longing. We're longing for the appearing of our great God and Savior, Jesus Christ. We are crying out, your kingdom come, your will be done. Welcome back. Andy White here. If you're just tuning in to Faith FM, you are listening to Open Up the Doors, Integrity in Broadcasting here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in that peak, WEGQ Quad 91.7. So I'm going to get back on track because, again, I got so much to get back on track with. So I've been asking the question, I've been laying out the groundwork of where we currently are regarding the current banking crisis. How will it be more of a contagion infecting the rest of the economy? Probably so. But it raises in my spirit, my heart, will 2023, that would be this year, we're in March here right now, as of this broadcast, middle of March, will 2023 bring the Econopocalypse? I've been waiting for it. I've been waiting for this Econopocalypse because I believe it's going to trigger really a lot of the next major movements. Remember, World War II came out of a Great Depression. When economies collapse and stresses out the rest of the world in a number of ways, the stage is set for further wars breaking out, and we already have wars, as you well know. It seems like this is almost a distraction from all of the saber rattling between Russia and America and China and Taiwan and America and Iraq and Iran and Israel. It almost seems like this is just another side issue, but no. These things are all connected, eschatologically wise. Where is all of this heading, really? Where is all of this going, really? What is the real end game? Now I'm going to zero back in on this economy, on this Econopocalypse. Again, never let a crisis go to waste, or a market crash, or a banking failure, for that matter. Never let it go to waste. So these people, whether it's planned, whether it's not, whether it's a combination of incompetence and planning, agendas, it all comes together. But one thing that was rather intriguing to me was that all three of these banks that were taken over by the Fed last week, all three of them, their major focus was on cryptocurrencies. You might think, well, so what? Certain banks have certain focuses. Some banks are more of a mortgage institution. Some banks are more of a corp. Like to lend out money to corporations. But 85% or more, or something like that, these banks were focused on cryptocurrencies, and that's kind of interesting. So the Fed comes in and takes them over. You think there might be something going on there? There might be. You see, our government right now has been fiddling around and fooling around with the idea of introducing its own cryptocurrency, a central bank digital currency, CBCD. And they don't like these independent cryptocurrencies. They want to bring more regulation. The whole point when Bitcoin first came out, the whole point was that it was completely separate from the Fed, completely separate from the government. You were basically just bartering with people. It was like made up money, but it took off because you could do transactions privately without any third party or fourth party, and it's become a multi-trillion-dollar enterprise, and the government doesn't like that. This is key, folks. They don't like privately owned cryptocurrencies. They hate Bitcoin and all the other ones, but they want one for themselves because they can control it. It's no secret, of course, that the Fed and a group of banks have been preparing for the next stage in their quote-unquote organized crash, the endgame, the rollout of a central bank digital currency. That's not been a secret. Remember, it was just a few months ago, back in November, that the New York Fed and global banking giants did a 12-week digital dollar pilot test program. So back in November, they did a 3-month program, which means that ended sometime about a month ago, roughly, maybe late January or early February. And then all of a sudden, these banks that zero in on cryptocurrency, that focused on cryptocurrency, go belly up and taken over by the Fed. I don't know. Again, just trying to connect dots. But this test project that our government did was called the Regulated Liability Network. Oh, I just love that terminology. The Regulated Liability Network, because the government loves to regulate everything, and they want to regulate how you spend your money. But they had banks simulate issuing digital money representing their customers' own funds before settling through with central bank reserves. And it was a test program. This pilot project tested how banks, our banks, global banks, American banks, it tested how these banks, using digital dollars, digital tokens, things like Bitcoin, for instance, but not Bitcoin, a CBDC, how the banks would function, how practical was it? How it would speed up in their, it would just be more efficient. It's always under the guise of it's just more efficient. We're just doing this to be more efficient. Yeah, efficient with on steroids. Because wait till you hear how efficient they're going to be. But let me quote from this test: programmable money. Isn't that interesting? Programmable money. Just think about that for a second. We can program your money. One day it's worth a dollar's worth a dollar, and the next day it's maybe worth 20 cents. Whatever we deem is necessary. Not just through market forces, but how the Fed wants to do it. Anyway, programmable U.S. dollars may be necessary to support new business models and provide a foundation to much-needed innovations in financial settlements and infrastructure. Now, that we could pause that statement, but I want to move on. But projects like this that focus on the digitization, getting tongue-tied here, digitization of central bank money and individual bank deposits. That means they want to take your money and my money, whatever we have in the bank right now, they want to digitize it. And by the way, when they push this program through, when they say this is what we're going to do, they're basically going to give you maybe 50 cents to the dollar. So if you have $1,000 in the bank, they're going to digitize $500. And I'm just rounding these numbers off. No one knows exactly, but it's going to be something like that. If you have $1,000 in your savings account and they go to digitize it, they're going to tell you, we're going to digitize it for $500. The other $500, you just lost it. Really, I'm serious. If you haven't heard about this, you need to look into it. But anyway, this is the government's endgame. This is where it's heading. This is what they want to push is this wide scale acceptance, if you will, of a digital currency. And with the loss of confidence in the banking system, the government will ride in to the rescue. They'll ride in to the rescue. Here comes the cavalry. We're going to save your deposits. We're going to digitize everything. Of course, you'll lose half of it. But we want to bring security and transparency and trust back into the system. What they really want to do is bring in complete and total control over everything in the monetary system. That is what it will do. Last week, or maybe actually it was in January, the Central Bank of Nigeria announced it will begin in January restricting cash withdrawals from banks and ATMs to just $45 per day as part of a push to move the country toward a cashless economy. Now, Nigeria is only one of 9 countries right now that have already launched an official CBDC. That happened earlier this year. There are 9 countries right now. They're already moving, and they are already moving to restrict the use of cash. This speaks to the fact that digital currencies were never designed, at least government ones, were never designed to function alongside paper currencies, but rather to replace them. They want to get rid of cash. They want to do everything electronically. Now, we've been talking about this for time immemorial, no doubt. But it's happening, folks. Fox News reported that the Central Bank of Nigeria will limit weekly cash withdrawals to $225 a week for individuals and about $1,124 for corporations, with a processing fee required to access more. Control, absolute control of your money, of the amount of money that you're allowed to take out of your account. You could have $1,000 in your account. I can go to the ATM right now and take out $500 if I wanted to. Oh, but not Nigeria or some of these other countries. I would only be allowed $225 for the whole week. This is where it's going. Haruna Mustafa, the central bank director of banking supervision in Nigeria, said cash withdrawals may be permitted in compelling circumstances, but not exceeding once a month. Oh, isn't that so nice of him? Can that happen here, folks? That's the bottom line. That's what everybody wants. Who cares about Nigeria or any of those other 9 countries? But can it happen here? Can it happen here? Well, can they force you to take a vaccine or lose your job here? Can they close down churches here? Can they close down your restaurant or your business here? Can it happen here? Oh, you can bet that they're working on it, my friends. We know that the Biden administration is completely on board with the World Economic Forum agenda. And last summer, the World Economic Forum began pushing aggressively for a digital identity system around the world. Headline, World Economic Forum, this is from last August, pushing for digital identity systems around the world. They called for digital ecosystems, and it all begins with having a digital ID. WEF, World Economic Forum, said digital ID would be the first step to building digital trust. So they're pushing this. And again, this administration is 100,000% on board with this. Building digital trust into our global digital economy can unleash trillions of dollars of opportunities. Oh, yeah, we'll just keep printing money, and if we don't, then we can just digitize it and perpetuate the fraud. But if we don't know for certain who we are interacting with online, we cannot have trust. Let me move this down a little bit, because basically this is what a CBDC is going to do for you and me, folks. Bankers, the Fed, central bankers, they'll be able to see what's in your bank account, period. Who you transact with, period. What you purchase, and anything else they're curious about in your financial life. This is where this is heading, and maybe faster than any of us realize. Anything and everything that requires an exchange of currency can be monitored, and transactions can be denied for such things as, well, I want to buy a new gun. Sorry, buddy, you ain't buying a gun. Meat. Oh, I want to buy that great steak that's on sale. No, we want you to eat less meat. You're not going to be allowed to buy that meat. How much meat did you buy last month? Oh, you're over the quota. You think this is funny? This is already happening, folks. Are you tithing to your church? Are you giving donations to a missionary organization or a pro-life group? Well, if they don't like where you're sending your money, they can divert those funds into government agencies. Digital currency will allow the government to seize assets at will. Oh, golly gee, Andy. What a perfect way to refinance Social Security. You know, Social Security is going busted. Well, why are you giving to your church then? We're going to take that money and put it in the Social Security account. Or we're going to put it in some other government social agency. How dare you give to a pro-life agency? We're going to give that money to Planned Parenthood. You'll own nothing and be happy. You'll own nothing and be happy. Just shut up. Just shut up and be happy, you little ingrate serf. Yeah, folks, don't laugh. This is exactly where they're bringing this. This is exactly the type of power and economic system that Revelation 13 describes, where no one can buy or sell without the authority of the beast and his mark. You know, folks, I said a long, long time ago, and I've said numerous times throughout the years, that the technology and the system of the beast will be here long before the Antichrist actually comes to power and exploits and uses it as his enforcement mechanism and loyalty pledge. And I believe one of the reasons he will so easily be able to implement his mark is because the population will already be used to using the system anyway. You need to understand something here. The system itself is not the mark of the beast. The Antichrist didn't create the system, but he will use and exploit it for his own purpose and total control. When he forces people to receive the mark of his name, that is the mark of the beast. Not the system itself, but how he exploits it and utilizes it and makes you take a mark. Daniel 11:43 says, he shall have power over the treasuries of gold and silver. Let's modernize that. He shall have power over the cryptocurrency. He shall have power over the CBCD, the treasuries of gold and silver in modern terms. He causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark, charagma or charigma, on their right hand. It means an engraving. The mark of the beast is a literal physical thing. It's not spiritual. Some people want to spiritualize it away. Charagma means the word character. We get the word character in part from this word. He places the imprint, like you're branded like a cow. You're branded like a sheep led to the slaughter. You're branded with his mark. It's not a sealing. You know, the Bible said, some people want to spiritualize it. Say, well, it's a sealing. It's God's sealing versus the devil's sealing. It's a spiritual thing. No. The word for sealing in the Greek for how when the Holy Spirit seals us is spragizo. It's spragizo. This is charigma. This is a physical mark, not something spiritual. You'll be able to see it. That's how the Antichrist will use it as an enforcement mechanism, as a loyalty pledge, because when you take that mark willingly, you will be saying, I pledge loyalty. I pledge allegiance to the Antichrist of whatever. You get the picture. He'll cause free and slave, and rich and poor, small and great, to receive the charigma, the mark, on their right hand or on their foreheads, that no one may be able to buy or sell except him who has the mark or the image or the number of his name.
I know a place,
but fret not, folks. We win in the end. Stick around. I'll be back. The fusion of heart, mind, and soul. This is Open Up the Doors with Andy White here on Faith FM, WEGB 90.7 and 93.3 in Napeague, WEGQ 0.7 FM in Quag. I'm up against the clock here. I got a few minutes left. I want to wrap up some of this stuff. Let me just say quickly, if you've never subscribed to my YouTube channel, look up Andy White, Open Up the Doors over on YouTube. And you can download these broadcasts as we post them. I'm also on Rumble at AJ White 777. Love for you to subscribe to either my Open Up the Doors YouTube channel or my Rumble channel. I'd appreciate it so much. We will be going to the phones in the second hour in a few minutes. 631-725-2069. If you'd like to be part of the broadcast, 631-725-2069. And I got just a couple of minutes left, really. Let me try and wrap this up. Should we worry about these things, folks? Is 2023 bringing in the Econopocalypse? What should we do about it? Well, absolutely not. You shouldn't worry. Remember, this isn't about fear-mongering. It's not about worrying. It's about informing you so that you can take the precautions necessary so that you don't need to worry about tomorrow. Jesus said, do not worry about tomorrow. We can, he will keep us in perfect peace whose minds are stayed on him. But one way that you can mitigate worry is by preparing in advance. I've been telling people for years, have a squirrel away some extra cash. Squirrel away as much cash as you can, at least to get you through a couple of months when a crisis really hits, because a perfect storm of financial events has been unleashed, I should say, upon us. And we need to be ready. If there's a run on your bank, folks, if you got less than $250,000, don't sweat it. Just have that extra cash. Don't fall in with the fear-mongering and take your money out of the bank, at least not right away. Let everything settle back down. Again, ostensibly, it's insured. Don't increase the problem by taking a run on the bank. We got to rest in him, folks. I believe that we're on the precipice, as I've been sharing so often. But we need to abide under the shadow of the Almighty. We who are of the household of faith will have all our needs met. We're trusting in him. He'll send the ravens. He'll supply. He's Jehovah Jireh. Our hope is not in a bullish America. Our hope is not in a prospering economy. It's wonderful when we have those times, but our hope is in Jehovah Jireh. It's him who we must learn to be content in all things, to abound and to be abased, like Paul says in Philippians. For I have learned in whatever state I am to be content. I know how to live humbly. I know how to live in prosperity. Paul writes, but everywhere and in all things I have learned both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's really what our focus is. That's really where our eyes are in the midst of all these crises and all of these coming, these are the coming attractions for the tribulation, folks. I hope you're enjoying the trailer. Hope you're enjoying the coming attractions. But God wins in the end, and I'm at the end of this first hour. Stick around. I'll be back. In the meantime, be brave, be bold, be strong, stand firm in the faith, and let all that you do be done in love, beloved. I'll be right back. Stick around.